I found him. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Halo VO panel. My name is Jessica Shea, and as one of Steve's and Keith's biggest fans, maybe not stature-wise, but definitely everything else-wise, I'm super excited to be here today and learn a little bit more about them, along with their craft. So let's start with introductions. Mr. Steve Downes, as if there's a single person in here that doesn't know this, but let's cover it just because. Which character do you play?
Well, I will tell you the exact line I said right after Halo 2 came out, and after Halo 1 came out, and I was with some friends in Florida whose kids were playing the game, and I had really kind of forgotten about the session. We had done the session, 6-7 months ago, and when you do these things, they come and they go, and you move on to the next thing. But the kids were playing the game, and they said, I said, I think I voiced a character in this game, and they said, really? Who was it? And I couldn't remember his name. I said, I don't know, but I think he was the main guy. And they said, Master Chief? I said, yeah, it was Master Chief. Within 15 minutes, there was about 40 or 50 kids outside his door carrying Xboxes and copies of the game, and I realized that I had hitched my wagon to something that I had no idea where we were going to go. So yes, in answer to your question, his name is Master Chief, Spartan 117.
I've done a few of these things with you, and that is a story that I have not heard before. And can I just say, whenever you say the Master Chief and Spartan 117, I still get goosebumps. Oh my goodness, so good. Mr. Keith David.
Yes.
Let's do the same thing for you. Which character do you play?
I play the Arbiter.
And that is another voice that makes me all sorts of tingly. I'm just going to bask in the glow right here and enjoy it just a little bit. So, Steve, back in Halo 4, that was the first time you met Jen Taylor, and it was a really neat thing because that was the first time you guys had been in the recording booth together. Right. First time you had met face to face. You had done CE all the way up until 4, and you met. And I heard that we have a similar situation here.
As a matter of
right
fact,
now.
we do. And I will, this is my one fanboy moment because I've been a fan of this gentleman for many, many years. and he would, I think I would not be overstating it to say that he is my voiceover hero, in addition to the many screen projects that he's been involved in over the years. So yes, this is the first time I've had the pleasure to meet Keith, and it is a true honor, my friend.
Oh, back at you, man. I mean, it's amazing. When we're recording these things, many, many times, you're not with whoever you're talking to. Either they have done it before or they'll come after. So sometimes you have the writer, the director, or somebody sitting in the room reading your lines to you that you respond to. And then, a frequently asked question that I ask is like, okay, who am I talking to? Who's the actor that I'm talking to? And have they recorded it? Because it's always better to respond to whoever you're talking to, whether you see them or not. I mean, you get the actor's response. It's not just somebody reading to you like, they're reading an instruction book on how to fix your refrigerator,
That would be an interesting read, having him do it, though. Think about that for a minute.
But, this is a great pleasure to be here today.
I asked the interwebs yesterday if anybody had any questions, and Mr. Eric Ibu, who is a super big Halo Wars fan, really great guy, wanted to know, it actually leads him perfectly, he wanted to know how is it different voice acting alone versus when you have other actors in the studio with you. And do you prefer one over the other?
Well, I would certainly prefer to have the other actors in the studio, but as Keith said, that rarely happens. And as you mentioned in the intro, the first time I got to work with Jen Taylor, the voice of Cortana, was in Halo 4, and we had never met prior to that. But we got to do, many of our sessions together, and it made all the difference for me. I felt like it heightened my performance considerably. And it's so much easier to be able to play off another human being as opposed to, most of the time when you are in the room by yourself and you sort of have to create this imaginary world in front of you. So it's always preferable, but most of the time, for a number of reasons, that doesn't happen. So we, as I mentioned in the panel this morning, we are, it is a solitary profession in many, many ways, and you do a lot of the work alone.
So let's talk about the background that you each have in voice acting. I'm really intrigued by what you both bring to the table. Because your backgrounds are just so different, but Halo is your common ground. So for both of you, what made you interested in voice acting, and what caused you to take that first step into this world?
Well, I've been an actor my whole life. I've always wanted to be an actor, so I feel blessed about that. But I was always fascinated. Steve is probably the only one in this room who might remember Myron Perkins and what was it? It was Mutual of Omaha, which was a wild, I think it was called Wild Kingdom.
Yes.
And it was a weekly documentary series about animals and their lives. And I was always fascinated by the guys who voiced them. Some of my voiceover heroes are Percy Rodriguez, William Conrad, John Forsythe, who while we were doing Gargoyles, John Forsythe actually played one of the characters, and then I got to meet him, and that was like fantastic, And I don't know, unless you guys follow plays and stuff, I had the honor of meeting Richard Kiley, who was Don Quixote in The Man of La Mancha. And I met him backstage at the Public Theater while he was playing the voice of God in a play. And I told him that, he was one of the reasons I became an actor, because I was about 16, and I went to go see The Man of La Mancha. And I was way up in the balcony, and while he was, if you know the play, when he's turning from Alonso Quijana into Don Quixote, he's putting on his makeup and he's making himself up, and then he sings and he says, "No longer will I be Alonso Quijana, but Don Quixote de la Mancha." And he began to sing, and I think the top of my head blew off. I knew that's what I wanted to do in my life, and hearing these guys do voiceovers, it was different than 30 some years ago, commercials and voiceovers were done by announcer guys. They were done by the same guys who do the baseball game or the football game. So it didn't matter what you were selling. It'd be like, buy Ivory soap. It's good for your face. It was always like that. And suddenly, somewhere mid to late 70s, suddenly you got actors doing commercials, and suddenly you had guys like Burgess Meredith who would say, so you too can have this too, and why don't you have a Milky Way? And suddenly you wanted to have a Milky Way, and it was fascinating. And then it was a whole movement where actors from theater and movies, we're now doing commercials. And it just changed the face of the whole industry because, I mean, you can tell now, I mean, there's sometimes the commercials are far more interesting than whatever the program you're watching. And it's because, you have movie directors who are now directing commercials. You have, real actors who are doing these things. So that these mini stories, these, sort of serial kind of things, and you become fascinating. And of course, that helps the sponsor with the product. But that's why I wanted to do it, because you could. I mean, when you ask the question, do you prefer live action as opposed to being in a voiceover booth? It's still acting. You don't act any less. I don't think you would play the character any less full or any less fervent if you were doing live action than if you're in front of the microphone. I mean, you still have to use your imagination to talk to the person. The difference is you are looking in their eye, and you're standing next to them. But sometimes even when you're standing next to them in the booth, as I would prefer to go, blah, 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 blah. You can't do that, because then suddenly you're off the mic. So you have to, talk straight. And very rarely, very, very rarely do you have the person standing opposite you while you're talking to them so you can actually see them when you're doing it. So it's a lot of creative imagination, but that's what we do.
So you were talking a little bit about the other opportunities that you've had and the stuff that you've done. What made you say yes to Halo when you had so many?
Somebody offered me a job. I mean, when I mean, it's an easier question to answer down the line. Why do you continue doing it? But when it began, who knew what it was? Nobody knew what it was. I mean, in fact, the whole industry of video games was, what is that? It's new. I mean, we used to play pinball. The closest thing I came to a video game was Pac-Man. So we didn't know anything about it, but suddenly, again, and from the time that it began, I mean, even Halo. I mean, if you look at the quality of the animation, suddenly it's like a mini movie. It's not even a game anymore. It's like, wow, I'm it's like I'm directing a movie because I can control this thing. You move this way, move that way, and. It's wonderfully surprising. I mean, and why wouldn't you want to do it? Because like I said, I mean, when I see the characters moving, and I know I can move them this way, I move them that way. It's like, man, this is fascinating. Sometimes, I mean, I've been in the booth where you got to go, let me do that again, because once you actually see what they're doing, you want to do a little bit of nuance difference than when you're just reading it cold and you're not seeing it. Once you begin to see it, and a lot of times what happens when you're in the booth is there's a mini camera set up so that your own expressions or gesticulations will be incorporated then into the picture you see. So I mean, that's why you want to do it. It's fun.
Well, I can go, Keith, one better on early experiences with video games. My first and perhaps only one that I ever felt I had any skill level on at all was Pong. I was killer at Pong, let me tell you. But yeah, it was it was a gig. It was I get this question asked a lot. Did you have any idea when you were doing Halo 1 that it was going to be? And I said, not only did I not have any idea, nobody had any idea. Bungie had no idea. We all just were, doing this thing and obviously hoped it was going to be successful. We didn't realize it was going to be, a paradigm shift. And yeah, so it was, and when I did Halo 1, they didn't even have a mock-up of the character for me to look at. So I didn't, you know, they just said he's this big guy in a suit, you know, and he's badass. So, you know, ready, go. and that was really that was it. And you know, in telling that story about you know, realizing what the game had become. In much of the voiceover world, in commercial voiceover, there's a direct link between the amount of checks that are in your mailbox and the success of whatever the project was that you were doing. The more checks, well, this must have been a pretty successful project. Right. Well, it doesn't work that way in video games, and damn it. And so if you're not in the world, which I was not at the time, you don't really know. But once the thing exploded and it became obvious that it was going to be what it was, then, you know, my interest in it, of course, you know, quadrupled, because, you know, my fascination with Halo is the story. I can't play the game worth a damn. I will admit that freely, but I love the story of it. And as the story evolves over the last, 14 years or so, it just becomes more and more fascinating to watch it and see where it's going to go and what's going to happen.
So, Tough Source from Twitter wanted to know who would win in a one-on-one, but since you just said Halo is multiplayer is maybe not
my thing.
Maybe not your thing. Let's take it to Pong. Who would win a one-on-one in Pong between
Well, I'm
the
a
two
little
of you?
out of practice. Plus, I don't think there is a Pong anymore, but
I mean, can you even find it?
I know. They're probably worth millions.
Somebody else from Twitter, BB Borb, I think his name is Brad, wanted me to ask anything that would make Keith respond to Steve with "were it so easy." So just keep that in mind as we continue, that if that ever seems like the appropriate phrase, you can bust it out at any time. So let's talk about real life backgrounds. And if you feel that either of your backgrounds have affected your ability to do VO, like Steve, for instance, the Master Chief is so stoic and strong and silent, and Keith, your character is very traditional and honorable and everything like that. Do you feel your real life background plays a factor in any of those qualities?
One would hope.
Yes,
Yeah,
one
yeah.
would hope.
Yeah.
Well, as I said earlier, my character is, you know, 7'8" and 450 pounds and no body fat. So, you know, that was my inspiration. But I don't know that I think maybe in a fantasy world, perhaps, and you know, as a kid growing up, I mean, who didn't want to be Superman? Who didn't want to be Batman? Who didn't want to be a superhero? So it's just so ironic that at this stage of the game, you know, I'm literally living out a childhood fantasy, and so I think I draw upon those memories as a kid, as to what if I, you know, what if I was Superman, you know, what if I was Spider-Man or whatever, and you know, sort of get that in your head of how you played that as a 8-year-old, you know, and tap into that somehow to do what I do for Master Chief, I suppose.
And were it so easy, we would all do it.
Like that.
You win. Are there pictures going up on the side? I can't see the screens. Is my slideshow going? Excellent. So some of these pictures are of your characters and just their evolution over time and everything. Oh, who wants to look at that? Where's the pictures? Let's look at the pictures. Yay! So both of your characters have changed really significantly over the course of the Halo fiction and storyline. Has that been challenging to play? How have you addressed that in your voice work? And what do you think about the evolution of your characters? And we can't talk about Halo 5.
You know, I mean, you know, one of the things that's great is, you know, sometimes you come in with once you see the picture about what the character might sound like, that's different than what I would do ordinarily. And then you have to trust whoever's directing it to say, well, can you do it? Usually they say, well, can you make it a little bit more gravelly? Can you do this? Can you do that? And you say, okay, well, let's try it like that. And so the evolution has been kind of great. I mean, it's like, man, first of all, I'm still here. Yeah. So I mean, that's a great thing. After all these battles, you got to be Superman to survive. So. I mean, that's just been a great thing to observe and be a part of. You see how it continues to grow, and it's like, I mean, if you were doing a TV series, and you were a regular, whether you were the lead or just a regular every week character, you want to see some growth, and that growth would be reflected in a look, whatever that look is. I mean, I think in the most extreme case would be somebody who starts out, as a child, and then, 7 years or however long the series lasts later, well, they're no longer 13 years old. They look 21, and they are 21. So the character has to grow along with that, and hopefully the writing reflects that. And in the same way this happens, we have to, we're not the same, we may still be badass, but you ain't the same badass you started out as.
Getting a little long in the tooth. I think, I can't say that I've been, that the look of Master Chief has changed to the point where it's necessarily reflected a change in my performance. Where he has changed, and I think it really began when he and the Arbiter began to, sort of come together in instead of just being, foes. That was the beginning of Master Chief sort of being a more complex figure. Up until that point, he was, shoot first, ask questions later, and he didn't ask a lot of questions. And but at that moment is when I felt that I was able to inject a little more into the character than what I could do before that, and then that only evolved even further with Halo 4 and the relationship between the Chief and Cortana. That really began to flesh this character out a little more than we were allowed to do prior to that.
And you were asking about, what may be similar in our own personalities. I'd like to think that certainly as I grow older, that the thing that you recognize in a fellow human being or other being, someone outside of yourself, that those qualities like honor and truthfulness, a sense of honor that you recognize and honor that in another being. So and respect that. And as we've become to be more respectful of each other and each other's journey, I find that reflected in my own life. In fact, as I was walking in here, saying to myself, you can look at whatever you're seeing without any judgment. I mean, you accept people for who they are and what they are, and you have a choice. I can either hang out with it or not hang out with it, But I don't stand there in judgment of it. I don't make faces. I don't go ooh, It's like, well, hello, and either it'll be hello and how are you and oh, what's happening, or I'll see you later.
Maybe another time. Although there was one guy walking up when I was coming up here who was dressed, and I hope he may be here, who had a bustier and pantyhose, and I thought, I don't know if that's a look I need to see again. Really.
Right.
I mean, he pulled it off, but I just wasn't sure I needed to.
No, don't have him pull it off, please.
Yeah, please.
Sounds like I need to rethink my evening attire for tonight, but that's a different story. Mr. Steve, Zombie from Twitter, Zombie13, Paul, who used to do the Halo comic back in the day, if any of you were familiar with that one, he wanted to know if you've been able to maintain being anonymous when you go out, or if you're just at the grocery store, if people recognize you as the chief.
It rarely happens, unless I want it to happen. You know, if I really want that table at the restaurant, you know, maybe we'll try to see if Master Chief might be able to get a seat. Although invariably, when I do that, the person has no idea what I'm talking about. And a long time, early in the Halo franchise, I was out to dinner with my sister and brother-in-law, and trying to explain to him what this was all about. My brother-in-law just didn't get it. Just didn't. You know, I said, no, this character he's kind of a big deal, and a lot of people. So he proceeded then to ask the waiter, you know who Master Chief is? This is him right here, and nothing. You know, the bellhop, the valet, he got nothing from. We happened to pick, you know, about 5 or 6 people who were not gamers and had no idea, and then wondering, what is your problem? Why do you call this guy Master Chief? I mean, isn't it a little weird, you know? So I would have to say, I mean, of course, that's the beauty of voiceover, and it was also the beauty of radio, is that you can be there when you want to be there, and you can be anonymous when you want to be anonymous, and that's the you know, sort of, I like to be able to, you know, change that out as the situation may call for.
Keith, what is your experience
Well,
with Halo fans versus other fans?
One of the biggest things that I get is, oh shit, you're the arbiter, right? And most of the time, that is not because I walked up to them, but I'll be like ordering at the counter or something, and somebody will go, "Show the arbiter! Oh my God, I just finished playing." You know, so I mean that, and admittedly, that's kind of fun, you know, because you know, and you could be anyway. I mean, I don't, except for my son who plays, you know. It's not a discussion around the house, right. and a lot of, you know, I mean, the couple of the other games that I do, I have young children, so they can't play it anyway. So I never get those kind of questions. But it's wonderfully interesting.
Yes.
It's wonderfully interesting when you have that moment of anonymity as you're walking down the street, and then somebody will hear you and go, "Ah,
Yeah.
is that you?
You're that guy.
You're that guy.
Aren't
Right.
you that guy?" I mean, one of my, again, an early story, Tim Dadabo, who is the voice of Guilty Spark, and an active gamer. So he was way into it from the early going. And I had never even discussed it with my wife. I mean, it was like I said, it was a gig. And he says to my wife, "Lizzie, do you ever call him Master Chief?" And she says, "I'm not sure that's any of your business."
I love that.
I have many things I'd like to say right now, none of which I'm actually going to say because I value my job. That's a good story. I like that one. Keith, you have played so many iconic characters, Spawn, Goliath, etc. How is the Arbiter different and or the same as some of these other characters?
First of all, I mean, his look is. I mean, I think he's the strangest looking guy I ever played. But again, one of the things that I really love about him is his. There's something in him that makes him attractive, you know. So you kind of get past what it looks like, and you are as much involved or engaged with what he's about, who he's about, than what he looks like. And that's I mean, it's fascinating because you know, in both Goliath and Spawn, two of my very favorite characters, and sort of flip sides of the same coin in another way. I think I've been blessed in that way, but most of the characters that I've played have been about discovering or wanting to discover, getting past what somebody looks like and getting into the spirit of one's character and who they are, you know, past the surface. And that, I mean, you know, that fascinates me as a human being, because, you know, as I travel the country or travel the world, and you see people are the same everywhere. You know, I mean, you'll find an ass in every country you go to. But you will also find some of the most beautiful spirits that you could ever see. You know, I mean, you'll be in bumfuck Idaho, and there's somebody who just shakes your hand with the right hand of fellowship and just embraces you, just in a way that, you know, I would have never expected that. You know, you think, you know, because just as you can encounter one person who can absolutely make you lose your faith in humanity, and you think, I'm not going to say hello to another so-and-so. And then in the next block, out of the blue, somebody will just say, hello, not knowing, and not knowing, not having anything to do with any kind of celebrity or, you know, anything that they don't know you, wouldn't know you again, and they just say hello. And you think, wow, it really can be okay.
Yeah. Well said. Well said.
Yes. Very, very appropriate for here. And the Halo community, I find just to be super accepting and very generous. I recognize a few of the faces in here, but when it comes to things like charity and like if a member of the community is going through a hard time, they're just so great about really pulling together. And I think you see that at events like this, where it is just a celebration of everything and everybody and whatever they want to be. I like that too.
Yeah, that's a wonderful thing. You know, I mean, you know, like I said, you know, human beings can be horribly disappointing, but faith in humanity can be wonderfully surprising and enlightening, and you know, it just it moves me actually when you can just be open to how wonderful another human being can be, you know, especially when you take your egoic judgment out of it. Because, you know, I mean, I'm sure all of us at some point, you will come, you know, walk down the hall and you see somebody coming at you, and you'll have a flash judgment about what that's going to be like, and so you try to avoid it, or you try to embrace it and get surprised, and then suddenly you do get surprised because it's nothing like what you thought it was. It has nothing to do with your thought, and your ego just lied to you about what you were about to encounter. And man, that's a fantastic discovery.
Yeah. And probably never more so than at these cons. Because look at you. You know, I mean, but I try to explain it to people who have never been to one. They say, wow, that must be weird, and everybody's looks so weird and all this. Like, you know, you have to just be there. And I've been fortunate enough to go to a lot of them, and it's almost always universally the same experience. It's just a lot of wonderful people who get together to share a common interest and have a lot of fun. And it's almost invariably every single time that's what it is. People will ask me, you know, have you ever had, you know, a bad experience or, you know, uncomfortable? And, you know, knock on wood, never. It's never been not good. And that's a testament to you and the type of people you are. So I thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So speaking of you wonderful people, I want to make sure that you have a chance to ask a few questions. So I'm going to get that going. I'm going to ask them one more thing. But if you have questions, be thinking of them. Do know in advance. We're not going to be answering questions about Halo 5 because E3 is right around the corner. We're so close. We're going to be getting lots of Halo 5 information then. So be thinking about your questions. I wanted to ask one more VO-specific one, and then we'll just take questions until the people over there kick us out. So could you tell us how the VO industry has changed over the past 10 years? And for people that are looking to get their foot in that door, what sort of advice or recommendations you would give?
Wow.
I always discourage anybody from getting into the voiceover. Don't, you know, especially if you have talent, don't really stay, you know, it's really not for you. Well, I think Keith hit on it earlier on in the tremendous evolution of voiceover from the days of the big announcer to actors and you know, people ask a lot of times, well, how do you suggest, you know, getting into it? What do I take a class or whatever? And you know, you could do all that, but I see some of the, you know, I think theater is a great background. Improv is a great tool to use to do voiceover because, as Keith said, you are acting when you're in that room, and because it's voiceover, you don't have the physicality to make your point. You have this, and how to exercise that in a way that is convincing to the listener that's the challenge. So.
I mean, the biggest thing is, I mean, voiceover acting, you're an actor. And you don't just act with, you know, I mean, just like if you're on stage, you just don't act with your voice, you act with your body. And when you're in the booth, you don't just act with your voice, you do, you know, you should see some of the sublime and ridiculous things you can see in the booth while you're going, ooh, ah, ah, you know. And it's fun, but you know, I mean, it's, you know, it's a total experience. So you have to learn how to act. So the most important thing is to study, and that study can come in an institution or a conservatory situation, or it can come, and it should always remain, from your observance of life, because you have to look at the page. And you have to determine what it is that you know about that situation that you can then reflect in your voice. Because just because you've lived a situation doesn't mean you can necessarily portray that situation, unless you have trained yourself in accessing yourself to yourself and being able to take what you know and interpret that in a way that I'm also going to get it, or they out there are also going to get what you're talking about, or what you're trying to portray. Does that make sense? Yeah.
You are both so wise. Very, very wise. Let's do questions. There's at least one mic over there. Go ahead and hop up so everybody can hear your question in a very controlled and nice, orderly fashion. Let's do it.
Hello, how are you doing today?
Good.
All right, I have a question for both Steve and Keith. What are your favorite Halo games?
What is your what?
What are your favorite Halo games?
The last one I did. You know, I mean, it's a kind of a general question, in the sense that, you know, like I said, we're working, and that's always nice. And there's always a situation within the game that's, you know, sort of more challenging or more tasty than the last one. But I mean, each time we get to be engaged in the game, it's like, this is fun. I mean, we can't talk about
Halo
what's
5.
coming up, so I can't, I can't tell you how much fun I had there. So,
All right.
I give you something, but, then I have to kill you.
Keith, wait a second. Keith, I've already tried that, and it doesn't work anymore. I've said that. I'll tell you, but I have to kill you. And 9 times out of 10, the response is, okay.
All right. And my second question is, this is for Steve. How did you feel when Cortana died in Halo 4?
Well, if you don't know by now, it's like people who DVR shows and then decide not to watch it for a week and a half, and you're not allowed to talk about it. It's like, no, look, there's a statute of limitations at some point. That, like, if you haven't gotten around to watching it or playing it or getting there yet, then too bad. I was that was a very dramatic scene, and one that I'll never forget. It was when Jen and I did it. We were in the room together, and Jen is a professional actor, and she. I was amazed at her ability to turn on and off emotions as they needed to be. I mean, she'd be doing a scene, and 1 minute, literally, tears are coming down her face. It's like, okay, we got it, and she's like, boom. Where's the Starbucks? She just where I'm like a mess on the floor, trying to pull myself together. But when we did that scene, first of all, I had my one diva moment where I asked that everybody who was not absolutely essential to the project leave. Because there's a lot of people on the other side of the glass who are just watching or whatever, not really working. And I just said I'd like everybody to not be here, which they did. And then I said to Jen, I said, when we record this, I may reach out for your hand during this, so don't freak out. She knows me, but she doesn't know me that well. So, I said, but if I do, I need to do that just to be in the moment. She's like, fine. So we get to that moment, and I was so wrapped up in it, and she reached out her hand waiting for me to grab it, and I left her hanging. And we were done, and she's like, dude, you left me hanging, and I was just like, but in a way I thought, that's probably what Master Chief would have done, because this whole idea of expressing emotion and especially those kinds of emotion is a challenge for him. So, he may have wanted to do it, but it just was not in his DNA to go there. So I thought at least that was my excuse to Jen at the time. So, I don't know if she bought it or not. But.
Thank
All
you.
right. All right, thank you for answering my questions.
Good afternoon.
Hello. This question is actually for all 3 of you. You've all worked within the Halo experience for varying years. What has been your favorite and/or probably the most enjoyable experiences that you've had or experienced that you've had while working with this franchise?
The most enjoyable experience.
Yeah, or memorable.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jessica?
So I have a very easy answer. It's things like this where I get to meet our actors and I get to hear their voices come out of their face. And it's been really, I know it sounds weird, but as I sit here and I watch them both talk, and you've both said a few things that very much feel like your characters, like sometimes I see your characters like superimposed over you. I am a weird person. I'm a very weird person, but I love things like this, meeting our actors. They're so passionate and they're so talented and they're so wise. And things like this are the reason why Halo is what it is. I am super blessed to come do things like this. My answer is easy.
I would have to ditto that. It really is a kind of a great thing. We ain't in it, not to be recognized. You don't do it for the recognition necessarily, but it's really wonderful when somebody says, "I appreciate what you do." There's nothing like that. As we were talking about earlier, one human being to another, heart to heart. I love what you do. Somebody came to me today and talked about a character that I've played that meant a lot in their childhood. And, you know, it was moving. I mean, you know, it's great when that happens. And I mean, that's why we do it. You know, as Steve was saying, you know, I mean, the training in the theater, you know, the theater, and this is a kind of theater in a way, but it's still, the theater is the one place that we still have, and I encourage you all to go to the theater.
Yes, indeed.
That the theater is still the one place that we have to explore what it means to be a human being. And it's a journey that continues the rest of your life to discover how much of a human being you can be. Not just one kind of a person, you know, kind of stuck in a mold or something like that, but to broaden your horizons and to be accepting. And this is one of the forums that we have, because, you know, the imagination has no limit in these games, especially as far as places you can go and what other beings look like, and how, in fact, you can be impacted by contact with those beings, and it's a fantastic thing.
Yeah, just real quickly for me, the cycle has been more or less about every 3 years with Halo, more or less. And so for me, it's like getting to revisit an old friend. And when I know that time is coming, you know, I look forward to it as I would look forward to visiting a friend that I haven't seen in a long time.
Right.
And so, you know, the anticipation is great. And then to be able to be immersed in the world for as long as it takes is, you know, like I said, it's visiting an old friend.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, hi.
We know you.
Hi. I have two questions for Steve.
Okay.
One, are you wearing your Cortana chip today?
I'm sorry.
Your Cortana chip, are you wearing it today?
It's too much echo. I can't.
Are you wearing
Oh,
your
my
Cortana
Cortana
chip
chip.
today?
Oh, what about it?
Oh.
She's with me everywhere I go. So.
And do you have a favorite Master Chief quote?
Do I have?
A favorite Master Chief quote?
Well,
Oh my gosh, you have to say it in character, in your voice.
Please.
Yes, we demand this.
Please do it.
I need a weapon.
And I just wanted to say something to all three of you, mostly Stephen, Keith. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I didn't mean it like that. I'm sorry.
You were
I'm
all
just
good.
I'm just really nervous.
You're all good. Go ahead.
It's all good, babe.
I'm sorry. It's just Halo is something really important to me, and it helped me through a lot of really bad times in my life, especially Chief. He's one of my favorite characters just because. Sorry.
It's okay.
He's just one of my favorite characters because of all the things that he goes through. And, you know, he's still able to just keep fighting. Yeah. And
Well, if you take nothing else away from it than that's a great thought to take away from. That's
just, and I mean, I like playing the newer games and everything, but it also kind of hurts me because it's just like I'm seeing my hero crumble. And it hurts, it literally hurts me. Like, I want it to happen because he's a character and he's supposed to develop, but it hurts me to see him in pain. And I hope everything gets better, maybe. I know it's not, but it would be great if it did. But
Yeah, we feel
what
the
was the
same way
line?
when
Were
we
it
do
so?
some of those. We feel the same way when we do some of the characters. When we were looking at Cortana in Halo 4, it was a really hard decision to make. It's really hard to do that stuff. And what it always comes down to is you have to be true to the character. Regardless of what that means, you need to be true to them, whether it's hard or not hard. So I definitely feel your pain there, and I'm going to have to go.
it really hurt me when
repair
she
my-
was gone because she was one of my favorite characters,
Yeah,
as you can see.
And let
Yes.
it be so with you.
yes. Thank you for your passion.
Thank
we
you.
appreciate it.
How's it going, everyone?
You better not mess up my eye makeup. I can't take another one of those.
Oh, don't worry. I have two questions. The first one's for Steve. I know in the first 3 games, Master Chief is very stoic, man of few words, you know, kick the door in, kill the bad guys, walk out like a boss.
That's pretty much it.
But did you like doing Halo 4 because you actually got to put more of a humanized version of Master Chief into
Oh,
it?
absolutely.
Because that's why Halo 4 is my favorite, because I don't do it for the gameplay, I do it for the story, like you said. And seeing the humanization for Chief after reading all the backstories, I have all the books and everything. It's actually good to see that coming through, because of all the things that he went through. It's good to see that he's actually human underneath the armor.
Well, I totally agree, and yes, and you know Halo 4 was my favorite for those very reasons, because you know, you got to do more than just kick the door in and shoot the bad guys. That there is a heart underneath all of that Mjolnir. And that's so yeah. I mean, as an actor, of course, you know, you want a more complicated you know, character. So it was certainly a lot more fun to do it that way.
All right, I'll make this quick. Keith, when you were doing Halo 2 as the Arbiter, when you found out all the stuff that was going to go down, like you're fighting to regain the Arbiter's honor, correct? Mm-hmm. When you figure out that the Prophets were actually planning to replace you with brutes, how did that evoke an emotional response from you? To like see that the character that you're playing is going to be betrayed by the very thing that he lives for?
There are some storylines that become a metaphor for life, you know, and I think, again, that's why, that's another kind of major reason, whether it's overt or not, why we're all here, because, you know, on some level, these storylines are a metaphor for life, and you know, you have to face those kinds of disappointments. So it's kind, you know, I mean, whatever it calls upon in the moment to, you know, to have to reflect that the depth of the disappointment in that, you know, then, you know, you have to sit there and then we can talk with the director about, okay, now how much emotion am I going to show in this or not? You know, and at best, even if it's not overt, there is some feeling about it that, you know, because, you know, in any script, certainly, but in any situation in life, there's what you say and there's what you don't say.
Exactly.
And so you also, I mean, I believe at the time trying to bring into it that which you don't say. I know what I'm saying, but you know, what's behind that?
And now, on a parting note, I know we can't say anything about Halo 5, but if this can happen, it would be awesome. Arbiter, Master Chief, Buck, and Sarah Palmer against a whole wave of enemies and watch them kill everything. Are y'all with me? Come on.
Thank you.
You can always write that in as a request.
Really quick, I think we only have like 60 seconds left, so we're going to end on your question. I'm so sorry to everybody in line. Are you two going to be on the floor? Is there any place everybody can come see you after this?
Yes.
Autograph sessions, anything?
Let me consult my notes.
Yes, we'll be back at 5:30.
5:30 at the autograph table. So.
Okay, so for everybody that we didn't get to, 5:30 autograph table, apologies. We're going to do one more, and I hope it's
this is going to
short
be really
and
this
not
will be a
about
really
Halo
quick
5.
question.
Better be a really good one.
So this is my first con, and I'm really glad to be here to see all three of you here.
Great, welcome.
My question's for Mr. Keith David.
Yes.
You have a really amazing film work, like you were in Platoon, They Live, John Carpenter's The Thing, and Coraline. And I wanted to know something about Coraline. What was it like working on a stop-motion animated movie with Henry Selick directing it? What was the whole experience like?
It was fantastic, actually, because I frankly, and I'll bet you $25 that he won't remember this, but I haven't seen stop action like that since Gumby.
Wow, that.
You know. So it was really fun, and the great thing about Henry Selick was I had a whole different take on the cat's voice,
Okay.
and he said no, and we came up with what we came up with, but mine was a totally different idea, so it was a great exercise in trust.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. David.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you to Keith. Thank you to Steve. Thank you, everybody, for coming out. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.